So Ann Hedges, as I said, is going to come in and talk about a lot of the details about how to lobby, what in the Capitol or little things that you might want to know about. For instance, if you wanted to get a note to your member of the Senate or the House, there's pages that run around. They're typically high school students or college students, I suppose, and you can give them a note and they'll bring it into where your representative is, whether that note says something like, vote yes or no on this bill, or can you come out and I can talk to you. So there's ways to contact your representative. And Ann, you can come on up here because I'm going to bring it up. Ann will talk about some of those little things at the Capitol that you guys will run into, whether it be pages or the big lobby in the center where we're all going to meet when we leave here. There's a lot of materials at the lobby desk, like maps of the Capitol, these books.
I brought one, I hope, for everybody.
So those types of things, if we don't get one here, as soon as we get there, that might be one of the first things you do if you don't have a legislative book, to grab one of those. They're free, and there's maps of the Capitol, so you know how to get around in there, because there's levels.
Doesn't that lobby, that main central lobby too, have a daily agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
One-page agenda of what's happening in the Capitol for the day. I found that
Right.
crucial.
Well, it's crucial for finding people.
It's a daily thing. I mean, don't they print that
Yes.
out every single day?
Yeah, they print one out. As you walk in the Capitol at the front desk, what you'll find is, you'll find a whole bunch of these books, and these are going to be really helpful for everyone. And then you'll find that list of, there'd be two piles. One has House hearings for the day, for the next 2 days actually, and Senate hearings for the next 2 days. And what happens is this gives you a general idea of where committee members will be, and what committees they're in for the day, what rooms those are in. But that daily agenda is more specific, and sometimes they'll change a hearing from 8 to 9, or this committee is going to meet in this room today instead. And so that it is really important for finding people, because legislators, they sit in meetings all day. This isn't like other states where they're part-time legislators. These guys have committee meetings in the morning from 8 until noon. They break for an hour at noon. They have to be back on the floor for the whole body. Each house meets for a couple hours from 1 to 3, and at 3 o'clock they start hearings again. And so it is hard to get a hold of these people. And the thing to do is, what I usually do is I'm there around noon. I'm there when they break after their floor session to try to find people. You time your, when you're going to find people by when they get out of committees, which is never exact. Depends on how long their hearings go, but they're going to be out by noon. They go on the floor at 1. They get off the floor sometime between 2 and 3, depending on how long their floor agenda is. And they have to be in committee rooms starting at 3 o'clock. So the best time to find people is when they are walking between those places. And I can't emphasize enough that that's when all the lobbying occurs. It's called walk and talk. And if you can't walk and talk with them, you're not going to get their ear. They're not going to have time to listen to you. They're in a hurry. So if you can't say it quickly, you can't say it at all. That's just a reality of the system that we have in this state. In other states, you can set up an appointment with your legislator, and you can go to their office kind of on an off day, and you can sit down with them. Not here. Here most of them, in the House at least, don't really even have an office. You can sometimes, during some down periods, like in the evenings, find them in their office. At lunchtime, find them in their office. Senators all have offices. I have a list of those, but they don't like to publish those. House members, there's a couple big spaces in the basement where House members can go and use computers, but it's not like they have their own desk. So a lot of what you do is try to find people. And then when you find them, you gotta talk fast. Those are just kind of the facts.
A lot of the House members don't even have the proverbial secretary and
Oh, no.
a couple assistants.
Nobody up there has a secretary except for leadership.
No, I didn't know
Yeah, no, I mean, lobbyists, people diss us all the time, but this is the only way they get their information. They don't have staff, they don't have secretaries, they respond to all their own emails, if they even have email, and some of them don't. So getting them, I know, it's crazy. But getting them is, getting their ear is something that, you know, it's tricky, it's a little art that we've all figured out. But they don't have anybody to do any research for them, and that's our job. That's what we do. Because they don't get information any other way. So in this form of government that we've established, lobbyists have so much power. A, we have institutional memory because we have term limits. And B, we just plain old have a lot more information at our fingertips than they do.
Do they have laptops on their desk?
Some of them do, the younger ones.
The state doesn't furnish a laptop for everybody?
No, I don't think so. I think they're all private laptops.
What's the technical term for this form of government?
Chaos.
You're on camera.
I've heard open something, open house government or something.
I don't know. I don't know what the technical term is.
I wonder how many other states in the union have this?
Quite a few.
Maybe half?
You know, I'm not going to venture a number, but quite a few. Having gone to talk to Sierra Club lobbyists all over the country, you know, the states cover the gamut. You know, thank God we're not in New Hampshire, but they have over, I think, 450 people in their house. You know, that's chaos. Try lobbying 450 people on a bill. You know, and you certainly can't provide staff and rooms and everything else for that many people. So I think that it really covers a gamut. Your smaller states have a system that's more like ours. As you move up, you know, you get to the big states like California where you know, you never even get to talk to a legislator. And here, legislators know people, you know, they know all the lobbyists by name, and everybody's on friendly terms by and large, because we all rely on each other to get information. So,
I didn't catch who you are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we launched right in, and I apologize for that.
I want to set it up.
Sure.
I had talked before that Ann Hedges is from the Montana Environmental Information Center, MEIC for short. And Ann's been working the legislature here in Montana for well over a decade.
15 years.
15 years. And so she brings a wealth of experience on how the process works, but we rely, as a Sierra Club, we rely heavily on organizations such as Montana Conservation Voters and MEIC to kind of get that information that's going on here in Helena and transfer it to us so that I can then put it out to the activists, folks like yourself. So the role that Ann plays is multi-tasking. And she's probably one of the most knowledgeable people on renewable energy conservation and efficiency that I know of, as far as
Which
the
is a
policies
frightening
and
thought.
things. Yeah. And so one of the things that we've got an agenda, and I wanted to make sure that Ann had a
I don't-
packet here,
I don't
and this
have an
has
agenda.
everything that everyone else has.
Great.
So what we wanted to do was talk about a couple of main bills, 2 or 3 main bills that we want to at least give you some meat of. And as you look through your packet, you'll notice that we've got the Clean Car Talking Points and the Senate Bill 180. Those two go together, okay?
I just passed around a fact sheet too on the energy efficiency standard.
That's great.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. And then a fact sheet on just kind of basic lobbying ideas, and we'll go over this quickly.
So the one main thing is this clean car bill, which is lowering emissions. We talked about this on the ride over, and some of the folks that came here should know that Ron Erickson has introduced this bill, and there's a hearing for it at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And this bill would put Montana in a position to join the other 14 states in adopting California's tailpipe emission standards. So we think it's something good. We want to applaud Ron Erickson for putting it in.
Yep.
Whether it's got, you know, full-on legs or not, I think Ann can answer that question. But it's something that, as Sierra Club members, that we need to we need to be pushing these types of things, legs or no legs, and you know, educating our members. So that would be the first one. The second one would be something that Ann's going to talk about here soon, about energy efficiency standards for the utility producers. And that's a way for us to put the onus on the utility producers to do a better job of finding ways to conserve and be efficient with their energy use. And we can drop quite a bit of percentages off of our use of energy just by doing it more efficiently at their house. There's always things that we can do, but what this bill does is say that as utility producers, there's things that you can do and programs that you can initiate that can help. And I'll let Ann talk more about that. And then the third thing, and I don't know if Ann has been privy to this, last night I got like a frantic call from our Washington D.C. office.
Okay.
There is a Senate resolution to oppose the Clean Water Restoration Act.
Right.
And our folks in D.C., I talked to our D.C. Legal team, and they really feel that if Montana does pass this resolution, it could harm our ability to get Tester and Baucus on board this legislation. And it's something that we don't want. You know, if we can help, we'd rather not have the state legislature be on record as saying that they don't want the Clean Water Restoration Act passed in Washington, D.C. So this is a resolution that says that we identify the Clean Water Restoration Act in Washington, D.C. is now in Congress and could be passed. We as Montanans oppose the passage of that. So basically that's what the resolution would end up saying. And it would put us as citizens in a position of, you know, living in a state that opposes that. And so the folks at Sierra Club think it's important at least to throw that out. If you do get a chance to talk to folks, I would say that might be one of the things that you might mention to them, and it's in your packet. So the Clean Car, the energy efficiency standards for utility producers, and the Clean Water Restoration Act resolution, which we oppose. And then Ann is going to talk about things that we are looking at defending. And there's some renewable
I'd like
energy
to talk about
standards.
some good ideas, mainly in regard to energy and global warming, and then some bad ideas as
Okay.
well. Just so you have a kind of a context of what are the big issues going on up at the Capitol.
Yeah, so beyond those three, you know, Ann is also going to give you some information about some other things that are going on. So I really encourage you to you know, beyond what you have as talking points, when she starts getting into bills that aren't included in your packet, I'd encourage you to, jot down a few notes so that you have at least an idea
Yeah.
about some of these things.
And ask me
Yeah.
questions.
So, and with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ann.
Bob, one quick
Yes.
thing. The energy efficiency standards, is there a number for that, or?
It's an LC right now, it's LC 1033, but the language we have right now is in flux. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's start out, hi, thanks. I have been doing this for a long time. I sometimes talk fast and assume more than I should. So stop me, ask me questions if you have any questions about what I'm saying. I've already told you that the hardest thing about, you know, going up to the Capitol is trying to find people. It really is. And that's why this book here is crucial. It has pictures in it. So you don't have to go up and look and go. It's really helpful if you're trying to find people, and have in mind who you want to talk to before you walk into the Capitol. Get their picture kind of in your head. Hold this book in your hand so you can keep referring to it. And think about where they might be. And this book will tell you where they probably are, but as you said, the schedule can vary from day to day a little bit, and it could be, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, just so you know, is very different than Tuesdays and Thursdays as far as where people are. So when you're looking at, let's say, who tell me, name somebody you guys want to find.
Paul Beck.
Paul Beck. Oh, good one. Excellent. I'd love to chat with you before you chat with him.
Well, I was one of the people that helped him get elected, and we're glad he's here.
Yes, we are. We want him to do a little bit about this revolt that's going on in the Beartooth Co-op on Highwood. So
Jay's all over that.
I'd love to have a little conversation with you. I don't know if you saw the Billings Gazette today, but
you know.
Oh, did
Arlene.
Arlene's make it in?
Yeah, Arlene's made it in. And then there's another letter to the editor saying how it's not just residences, but schools are experiencing these enormous rate hikes because of Highwood, and, you know, that's just a problem. So I would love to have a conversation, because there's all sorts of little things going on right now, and I want to get a bill introduced on this.
They're gonna have a meeting next week about that.
I know, they had to cancel a meeting in the legislature on Tuesday because SME, on coal development in Montana generally, because SME has to go quell the revolt that's going on at Beartooth on Tuesday.
There's a revolt.
Yeah.
I got my bill, I know all about that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that is an aside, but I do want to have a little brief conversation with you. So Paul Beck, let's go look at Paul Beck. So he's in the house. Go find his picture.
Alphabetical, are they?
They're all alphabetical. And you see him on page 30? Yes, page 30. And you'll see listed under his picture the committees he's on. He's on Business and Labor, Education, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So I can tell you right now that Business and Labor is an every morning committee. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon committee. That means that Education is the committee that he's going to be on this afternoon. And the way you find out when committees meet is you
We
go.
have that information in their packets.
Great, okay, and it's also in this book. You can go after all the pictures, they have the committee listings. So if you go to the Education Committee in the House, after all those photos of legislators, you'll see that they meet in room 137 at 3 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And you'll see Beck's name there. So what you're gonna wanna do is go hang out by that room. That's just the way it works.
Right before 3.
Right before 3. Or you can go hang out by the floor, which is on the 3rd floor on the far west end of the Capitol. Go hang out by the floor and wait for him to leave the floor. You can't go on the floor when all the legislators are there as a group. But at some point, Paul Beck is going to have to walk down the stairs from the 3rd floor. I'm not kidding. Down to the 1st floor to room 137. And if you can find him as he walks out of the House floor, you can walk down the whole stairs with him and have a conversation with him and fill his ear. And that is the best time.
He's tall, so you can see him.
Okay. And you have a picture of him. And you'll see when you go there that at 3 o'clock or whenever the House is getting off the floor, that 3rd floor area outside the House chambers is packed with lobbyists. That's what we're all doing. We're trying to find a legislator to walk with them to their next committee meeting, to fill their ears. So that's just the practical reality of how you find people. Are there any questions just about that piece?
Can you talk about how the pages can bring notes
Yes,
to your
yes.
representative, or they can come out?
Yes. When they're on the floor between 1 and 3, outside the chambers, there's a desk. There's a sign that says lobbyists can't go beyond this point. There's a desk there with a kid sitting next to it, and there's a little table, and on that table there are these little like manila-colored pieces of paper. You can send a note into your legislator. That page will take the note into your legislator. And what you do is you just write their name on the note, and you say, "Can I talk to you in the hall for a minute?" You know, when you have a second, when it's convenient. And then the page will take that note in. It's always nice to tip the pages. They're just high school students. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it is something that is often done. The page will take your note into that legislator, and if the legislator wants to, they come out from the floor and we'll chat with you. And so you have to stay there. After you send a note in, you have to sit and wait for the legislator to get the note and to come out. And sometimes, you know, they can't come out because they want to talk on a bill that's on the floor, and it may take them 15 or 20 minutes to come out. Sometimes what I do is I send in a note, I go upstairs to the 4th floor, watch the page deliver it, see them open the note, see whether they're paying attention and they're going to come out. And as soon as they stand up to come out, I run down the stairs. You know, otherwise sometimes you're just wasting your time wondering if they're going to come out or not.
Well, do you ever use those notes as just a reminder, or
Sure.
try to
Vote yes, vote no.
say this is a hugely
Yes.
important bill, please
Vote
support it?
Yes, when there's, Usually I only do that when there's a bill up on the floor. I mean, you have to recognize the limitations that legislators have. They're hearing dozens of bills a day. They're hearing them in committee, they're hearing them on the floor, they're hearing them in committee again. And every day are new bills. And so they have a hard time tracking. And so if you want to send them in a note about a bill that is not on their radar screen, because it's either not going to come to their committee, it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing yet, or it's not on the floor that day, it's not very useful. That's when you really have to talk to them.
Timing is huge.
It's huge, it really is, because they can't process that much, they just can't. And try, some legislators are great at bill numbers, but it's better to say, if you say the bill number, make sure you also say who's gonna sponsor it and what the bill does, so that they can incorporate those concepts, because bill numbers just come and go. There's hundreds and hundreds of bills that they deal with. So bill numbers are good, but always accompany it by relevant information so they can remember that bill.
Should they put their name and where they're from on the note as well, so that they know
Well,
their
if you're from their
constituent?
district, yes. Yeah. That's a good idea. If you're not from their district and you just want to find them, that's, not necessarily the best thing. So pages can be useful, but sometimes legislators don't come out, but they usually do. It's just one way to get them off the floor and not waste all your time waiting till 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're right. And
Okay.
I've had them not come out, and I've had them come out.
Right.
So,
right.
When you two, as environmentalists, when you write the note to them, you say who you are and who you represent? I mean, if it's a Republican that's anti-environmental, you really want to bend his ear, though. If you write down that you're Sierra Club, I would guess in many cases,
Right.
you look at the note and just chuck it on the floor. Do you ever kind of keep it hidden? So,
I am
can.
not hidden.
She
There's nothing about me or my name is hidden, because most legislators that are even swing votes know who I
Do you
am.
feel obliged to write your name on that?
I do. I usually don't try to pull legislators off who don't agree with me. I usually don't try to pull them off the floor. I try to have a personal conversation with them. When it's convenient for them.
In the hallway or
Yeah.
downstairs?
Yeah, I try to track them down instead of making them leave what they're doing to talk to me. That's just my own personal style.
I mean, would you ever be, Bob, if you do it, would you ever be sneaky and just don't write down Bob Clark, Sierra Club on the note?
I wouldn't,
They're gonna find out.
yeah.
They're gonna find out.
Assume being sneaky in that if you're not, I'm thinking they wouldn't come out, you wouldn't talk to them.
Now, I would
You know what I'm
argue,
saying? It's kind of unethical.
here's a little strategic piece that I believe in, but I don't know how Sierra Club feels about it. I never, if I were you, if I were an average citizen coming up to the Capitol, I would not affiliate myself with an organization. You are a Joe citizen. You are here because this is your government in action and you have a right. You don't want the baggage that might come along with your affiliation to taint that conversation.
Unless you're talking to Ron Erickson.
Yeah.
Then you tell him you're Sierra Club.
Yeah. I mean, there's a handful of people, but you might not know who those people
Yeah.
are. And Ron will get pretty quickly that you're
A buddy.
you're a
Yeah.
good guy. So I would argue that don't give your affiliation, don't give it in testimony, don't give it when you're talking
Okay.
to legislators. That's your choice.
Well, Jonathan was gonna testify at the hearing at 3.
As Sierra
on
Club,
behalf
that's
of
fine.
the
Is that all right?
chapter.
Yeah.
Well, you represent the chapters.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have
But everyone else should be
here stand
citizens.
up and say they're also Sierra Club, because
Right.
then they lump you together and dismiss you if they don't like you.
Right.
Otherwise, Jonathan's the only one they're gonna dismiss if they don't like Sierra Club. Sorry, Jonathan. But everybody else is Joe Schmo citizen who took time out of their busy workday to come up. Let's just briefly go over this. Make sure you have breath mints. You don't want to be talking to a legislator if you have bad breath. I carry Altoids with me constantly. Personal presentation. You want to make sure that you are respectful of them. That you're not being rude. It doesn't get you anywhere. That you are very succinct. That you are courteous. You can get a lot further with honey, right, than vinegar. And that's the name of this game, is just try to be nice and respectful and defer to them and listen. So, the qualifications of an effective lobbyist, I think that's all pretty obvious. How to lobby, certainly know what you want to say before you go and talk to them. Have some concept. Make it somewhat personal, especially if you're not representing an organization, and if you have a personal little piece of information that will connect you to them in some way. If you know Paul Beck, if you didn't know him but you knew he was from Beartooth, say I am too. Just some little personal connection. It's always helpful to find out what motivates legislators, and you guys don't have this. These cost $5, but they're the most useful tool there is. What it tells you is a paragraph about who that person is, how many kids they have, what organizations they belong to, when they were born, where they went to school. You look at this and you're like, oh, that person, that person is a gravel pit owner. Guess I don't want to talk to them today. But knowing a little bit about a legislator is very helpful. If anybody wants to look at this before I go, to see what legislators you're trying to contact and see if there might be something that you can connect with them on.
They went to the same college as your brother. Or,
That's exactly right.
You can find little hints.
Right. Find out what motivates them. This is all pretty much stuff that you're going to already be beyond. And listen. Don't just be too pushy. Listen to what they have to say in response. Laugh. Don't be so serious. If you can crack a little joke with them, all the better. It's just, people like that. It's personable. Arrive at hearings early. So you guys are going to go to the hearing, hopefully on the clean car bill this afternoon. Arrive a little bit early to get a seat. Have your testimony, but do not read it. Never, ever, ever, ever read testimony off a piece of paper. Even if you're like sitting there going, I will never remember all these points. It doesn't matter. It's better to forget 3 points that you wanted to raise and look them in the eye as you're testifying, because if you're looking at a paper, they realize that that's the green light for them to get up and walk around and go get a snack or start talking to somebody or do something else, read the paper. Look them in the eye while you're testifying. It's just, you've lost the effectiveness of your testimony if you read it. Always begin by saying, Madam Chair or Mr. Chair. See who's the chair. This afternoon it will be a Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, my name is. Look them in the eye. Don't repeat what somebody's already said. Listen to what's already been said. And, that nothing makes legislators madder than having to listen to the same thing again and again and again. Really, you can keep it very short. You don't have to say much. Think of one unique thing you might say, something you might add. On the clean car bill this afternoon, Jonathan, you could say something about how your family are these awesome athletes, and you, in order to continue, for your sons to be raised and continue down the path of being these incredible athletes, they need clean air. It's going to affect them if they're in a community that has bad air. And that they probably don't have track meets in places where the air pollution is wretched. Some little personal thing, or, say, we don't want Montana to be a dumping ground for dirty cars. If 50% of the people out there are covered by a state that has adopted this standard, we don't want to be left getting all the rejects in this state. I mean, try to think about a little bit of an argument that's a little bit unique. Then tell a personal story. Keep it short. I'm serious. Nobody wants to hear anybody talk for a whole page single-spaced. You've lost them. Half a page, double-spaced, no more, unless you are the lead testifier and you want them to ask you a ton of questions. And I'm assuming that you probably don't want to be put in that position.
And on this clean car bill, are you going to be the lead testifier? Or
I'm hoping Chuck McGraw is with Natural Resources Defense Council. Chuck he's been tracking it way more than I have over the years. So Chuck and I are meeting at 11:30,
Mm-hmm.
and
then is there a way that the speakers are arrayed so that the lead testifier gets to go first and then other people.
Yeah, I mean, what I would recommend is unless you have killer testimony, let somebody else go first. The first person to testify always has the target on their back. The first, second, sometimes third. That means legislators are going to ask them questions. If they don't like this bill and they want to go after somebody, they're going to go after the first proponent or opponent. So wait in the lineup a little bit.
Who's given that first position? I mean, do people have to scurry for it and compete to be the first? Or-
Well, you know, as lobbyists, we try to figure out who that person is going to be before a hearing.
You mentioned this natural resource.
Yeah, Chuck. You know, oftentimes, and this is totally my own bias, and I'm sure it's bad, but it's a lobbyist that's in the Capitol all the time that is able to handle, when a committee starts going after him, able to handle that.
But, I mean, could some unknown from
Absolutely.
puny town, slip in ahead of Chuck? I mean,
Yeah, and it happens, and that person will drone on and take up, they usually say, okay, we're gonna give each side this much time, and that first person will slip in there and take all the time, and you're sitting there going, ah!
Like they have planned from the other side.
Right, and I'm always saying to the industry guys, is this your boy? What were you
Usually, like,
thinking?
right before the hearing starts, people like Ann, and they'll know who our people are, and
Right.
we'll be whispering and saying stuff, like Chuck's gonna go first, then this person, so.
And then it's,
It
it's usually
happens
only the
very
first
quickly.
couple people that we figure out. And if we can, I mean, we love bringing in somebody from out of town who can be the expert. That's the ideal, but it's a hard thing to do.
and do you start crowding towards the podium, towards the?
No, just usually, they say, okay, any opponents or proponents, and then somebody stands up quickly, and everybody just defers.
You defer to Chuck.
Yeah.
When you walk into the hearing room, there's usually on the right or left, there's a table with a
Sign in.
sign-in sheet. And it'll ask you, I believe, whether you plan on testifying or not, is that correct? Or just that whether you're for or
Sometimes they do and
against?
sometimes they don't. It's usually just for and against.
So you, make sure you sign in and put whether you're for or against the bill that you're there at the hearing for. In this case, you'd be for the
Right.
the bill. So that's one thing when you first walk in, and then just pay attention to what's going on around. You're seeing Ann, Chuck, you'll see that he'll be talking to people like Ann, and so, yeah, I think you're right. Let those people like you and Chuck do that because
Put
you
the
have
target on the back.
information. Yeah,
It's just
and you can always speak from the heart.
better
Don't feel
that
like you have to have
absolutely.
every answer.
Personal stories from people who aren't everyday lobbyists are the most effective testimony. They just are. And if you can figure out a way to make something like this personal, wonderful. Just keep it short. Be respectful. Don't lecture. Nobody wants to hear a lecture. Nobody wants to hear about how, every once in a while I do this and it's a mistake, but how global warming is the biggest problem facing mankind today. And unless they do something quickly, that's not effective testimony. We know that, but find an argument that you think might persuade them that that's true. Lectures aren't useful. Stay until the hearing is over, because sometimes a committee member will have questions of you, and you're supposed to. Never stretch the truth. Never say more than you know. Thank committee members. And then the other things are just little nuances for later. How to lobby if you're outside of Helena. You're not here today, but you're here today, so we'll do that. And then for real lobbying, count votes. Who's on the committee? And that's one thing that's very useful, is to know who's on the committee before you go in there and testify. So I know that Senator Esp is a co-op member. I'm not going to diss co-ops as co-ops are the worst utilities for global warming policy. That's a fact. That is a fact. That's not a stretch of the truth. But I'm not going to say that to the committee. So think about what you're saying and who you might be making mad before you say it. It's just all common sense stuff, really. Are there any questions about just the kind of the basics of finding legislators, talking to them, keeping it brief, going to a hearing, testifying? Okay.
When you sign up, do they call you in the order that you sign up?
No, there's
You
no,
just go up,
That's
no one
right.
calls you, you just go up when you.
you just go up when you're ready. And a shaky voice is an okay thing. If you're nervous, that's fine. Legislators appreciate the fact that citizens come up and are nervous in that setting. But remember, you're on TV. All of this is televised, so, you know,
The order of who speaks, it's all intuitive then. I mean, it's whoever just kind of gravitates up there.
to some degree, on really big hearings, we absolutely orchestrate the order. This isn't a really big hearing. This is a good hearing. It's an educational hearing. I can tell you, based upon the outlook of, you know, what the Senate looks like, this bill doesn't have a lot of shot. But it is a really important education tool for these committee members. You know, like I said, they don't have staff. They don't have anybody doing this research for them. This is where they learn that there's even a California clean car standard. This is where they learn how many states have already adopted it. This is where they learn that 50% of the consumers out there are going to be covered by a state that has this standard. And so, you know, either the car industry is making two different cars, and, you know, bad cars are going to go to dumping ground states like Montana, or the car industry is going to be elevated by all these states who are adopting it, and there's enough share of the market that they're going to make one car that's more efficient. You know, this is where they learn. They have no other mechanism to learn. Some of these guys, the only information they get is Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, and blogs. It's the truth.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know,
Or their constituents, that's all they're listening to, and
Right.
so they hear it from their constituents who are educated by those
right.
outlets.
Like Senator Black, chair of the Senate Energy Committee, said yesterday to me, you know where I stand on global warming. I do think it's happening, but there's no science to prove it's caused by man. And I said, you know, I'm going to put my faith in most of the scientists out there, especially Dr. Hansen with NASA. You know, I think you need to do a little more research on your science there, Senator. And he laughed. But he does. He's
You
wrong.
should tell them what somebody told me. If 99 doctors were telling you that you have cancer and you need to start treatment right away, and one doctor was saying that everything's fine and there's nothing wrong with you, who are you going to listen to?
Right.
That's a pretty good analogy. I might want to use that with legislators, but
Well, and I think another good point is, it doesn't matter what these legislators think about global warming. The rest of the world believes it. And the rest of the world is changing, whether they like it or not. And either we become a part of that movement, or we get left behind because we still want to argue whether humans are causing this problem. You know, that debate is over, and now we're on to the solutions. Let's help generate technological advances in Montana. Why not? You know, clean cars that are more efficient and get better fuel mileage. Great. You know, pollution is an inefficiency.
err on the side of caution.
Yeah. So, and it's happening anyway, whether they like it or not. So are we going to get with the program, or are we going to stay back here debating whether there should be a program?
Well, and that's a ploy that I remember Ronald Reagan even used constantly, is, well, we're not quite sure, we need more research.
Right.
We need to study this issue more. And it was just a ploy to put it off for
Right,
another
delay.
2 years, put it off for another 2, we still aren't quite sure,
Yeah.
let's research this issue.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's a scam that's been, you know.
a total scam.
Republicans have used for 30 years. and
Right.
I'm really tired of it personally. You've got to act. If you get 99 of the scientists saying this
Right.
is happening, you should move.
right.
Not wait for 100%.
Especially when that movement saves people money. I mean, it is just, this can just as easily be about bank accounts and security.
Yeah, foreign.
You know, if you don't believe in climate change, whatever, who cares? Don't we want to get off foreign oil? Don't we want to have vehicles that are more efficient so we don't have to keep buying from the rats and the dictators? You know, it just makes good economic sense. But just in that vein, I don't know if anybody's looked at the Governor's Climate Change Advisory Committee report, in which the governor asked Montanans, basically, to get together, and he appointed a certain number of people, and then a huge number of people assisted, to develop a strategy for reducing Montana's global warming pollution. And this clean car standard was the single most cost-effective means of reducing CO2 available to the state today. It will save each consumer $100 a year in the long run. That's what the CAC analysis showed. So
most effective
it is the most
measure.
cost-effective measure to reduce CO2 available to Montana today.
In terms of timing, is this gonna go up for a vote?
It will not be, you know, that's a great question. Committees don't vote on bills usually the same day they're heard. That's where lobbyists come in. They go and they hear all the testimony, and then they wait until, they can wait a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, before they actually vote on it
This is the only time it will be heard.
in the Senate.
In committee.
That's right. It will be, if it makes it out of the Senate, let's talk the process for just a second. What happens is a bill gets introduced, it gets assigned to a committee. That committee holds a hearing on the bill. At some point in the next week or so, the committee will vote on that bill in something called executive action. There's no public hearing at that time. The committee debates amongst themselves the merits of the bill. So, you know, there's a lot of, that means that there's that week time to work on those people on the committee, to get them additional information, to get phone calls into them, urging them to support the bill. So there's a week lobbying time almost always between when there's a hearing and when the committee actually votes. The committee votes on a bill. If it dies, it sits in that committee. There's always an opportunity to bring it back up, but you have to change a vote to do that. Usually they're dead. Then if it passes, it goes to the floor of the whole body. And the floor of the whole body will do what's called second reading on the bill. That's when the floor debates the bill, the merits of the bill. And then they vote on it. If it passes second reading, it goes to third reading. And in third reading in each house, there is no debate. It's a straight up or down vote. Usually the body will do all their second reading bills first on their agenda. So they'll have all the debate on all the bills in one afternoon. And then at the very end, before they break, they do third reading. And there's always a day in between second reading and third reading. So that if, for example, and we've done this quite a few times, if the vote is close on second reading, you either have to shore up the votes you want, make sure you keep that vote on second reading the next day, or if the vote is close and you want that bill to die, you can lobby and kill a bill on third reading, and then it's dead. So then if it passes third reading, it switches to the other chamber, and the same process happens. It goes through the public hearing in the committee votes on it, goes to second reading on the floor, gets debated, and then goes to third reading, and then it goes to the governor's office. That's just the process. Right now, we're at the beginning of that process. The first hearing on most bills is occurring right now.
Is that process in this book?
It is not.
Is there any chance
There's something
you
like
could write
cartoon.
that on that?
There's a cartoon in one of these books. There is, yes. You're right.
Oh, yeah, it is.
There
yeah.
is, in that book, there's a cartoon. I've never looked at it. I assume it's accurate.
There's always a third reading though. It'll always go that far.
No, if it doesn't get out of committee, if it's voted down in committee, you know, this committee that you have up this afternoon for the Clean Car Bill, for example, has 6 Republicans and 5 Democrats. Republicans control the committee. The committee chair controls when they do executive action. The committee chair, if he doesn't like a bill, is going to try and do executive action when he's sure he has the votes to kill something or pass things that he wants.
Because they've got majority.
They have control.
How do you feel about Ryan Zinke?
Zinke is, you know, I don't know him yet. I think he has a bill I don't like, but he was co-endorsed by Montana Conservation Voters.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and so there seems to be a lot of potential. He seems, what I've been hearing is he's very open to talking to people and getting information. I have hope for him, and he hasn't proved otherwise that I shouldn't, other than his one bill that I don't like, which is eliminating the citizen petition process in groundwater, it's complicated, but it's eliminating a citizen process for getting DNRC to say that there's no more water left, groundwater available for appropriation. But, you know, that's not the end of the world bill, so I'm not gonna hold that totally against him.
Conservation, party on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I suppose he's going to be covering it.
Yeah, he was there, and that's better than a lot of Republicans who won't even go to an Enviro event. The Clean Car Bill, I don't know what to say about it. I think Bob's done a nice job here of kind of summarizing the main points. You know, these cars are not efficient. They can be more efficient. Detroit back, you know, years ago said the same thing about seatbelts, airbags. You know, these were ideas that were going to bankrupt the auto industry. Lead standards and fuel. You know, these auto industry people always put up the same tired argument. And look, well, they're not doing so well. And that has nothing to do with the fact that they put seatbelts and airbags and we got rid of lead and gasoline for vehicles. Helping them become more efficient is a good idea because they don't seem to be willing to do it on their own.
And are there any other, you said this is the only thing coming out of that governor's climate change advisory committee?
No, and the governor's supposed to come out strong on this as well. So I think that's very helpful. And I would just, don't go until the governor's office is gone, as far as testifying.
Clean car?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know.
that's what Chuck said. Yeah.
That's changed. He wouldn't do paving standards 2 years ago.
No, he wouldn't. But because he signed on to the Western Climate Initiative, and this is a piece of this,
Did I predict that? That would be his incentive.
yep,
We'll take it.
You'll take
Whatever
it.
incentive he needs.
that's right. Well, you know, we'll see how they do. But the governor's office has been pretty good this session, which is nice. Let's go quickly to the energy efficiency standard. You know, we passed a renewable energy standard back in 2005, which requires utilities to get 15% of their energy from renewable resources by 2015. This is a very similar concept. It requires utilities to get all of their cost-effective efficiency by 2020 with, you know, standards in place, a plan in place so that between now and then they're working towards that goal. 18 other states have adopted similar measures, so we by no means are leading the pack. It probably will only apply to the 3 largest utilities in the state, which are Northwestern, which is by far the biggest, the Flathead Electric Co-op, which co-ops hate regulation, so that's going to be a struggle, and Montana Dakota Utilities, which has some customers. It applies to both natural gas and to electricity. And what it does is it tells the co-ops to go out there and determine how much conservation is available on their system. And this is something that Northwestern has already done. Northwestern determined a few years back that they had about 100 megawatts of efficiency on their system that would be cheaper for them to acquire than traditional power. So what we're saying is you don't have to go out and spend a ton of money. We want you to find those things that actually save money and help implement those. And that can be the utility implementing them, that can be the utility helping homeowners or businesses implement efficiencies. You know, efficiency is it's the cheapest power we have.
Montana Power did that about 20 years ago. You got paid $1 for something like $1 per incandescent. You know, those
That you traded out.
Small
Right.
screw-in incandescent types.
And Northwestern has had that CFL program going for quite a while. You know, but unfortunately Northwestern has this much efficiency on their system, but they haven't been terribly good about going out and acquiring it. And so this gives PSC a little bit of oversight over those programs to make sure that they are capturing cost-effective efficiencies. So, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did look up the hearing and it is in room 422.
It is, okay.
For SB 180, which is the clean car.
Get there early.
Yep,
That's my
room
recommendation.
422.
Go put your bag on a chair. So Art Noonan, a Democrat from Butte, has agreed to carry that bill, the energy efficiency standard for utilities.
Is there a number for that yet? Or is that-
It's LC, so it's a bill draft, 1033. It doesn't have a bill number. What we're doing now is we're trying to work with Northwestern to figure out if there's any way they can support the bill. I had more hope 2 weeks ago than I do today after I've read their response to our proposal.
Well, they ought to, because they're trying to join the Northwest Energy Coalition.
Yes, and you're right, Jonathan, there seems to be a little disconnect between Bob Rowe and his staff. Bob has told them he would like them, this is the word we've gotten, Bob has told them he would like them to support this bill, but the staff still can't quite get there. So Chuck and I are trying to figure out how to go around the staff and get Bob to push them a little bit harder. You know, it's complicated. But we would ideally like Northwestern, and Northwestern's CEO would like to support the bill. We just have to figure out,
He can't say that the company supports it and then it's done?
no. He should be able to, but he's new. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, he is working within a framework that he's not familiar with too, so, that's easier said than done. Let's see, I forget which bill was gonna be next, but I'm just gonna mention quickly, Big Sky Rivers Act. And you can find this on lots of people's website, and this is a setback for, I'll pass this around. It is a building setback on the major rivers in the state. It is a little bit different than the bill we've run the last 2 sessions. It's limited to about 10 major rivers in the state. It's a 250-foot setback. That says you can't build new homes, structures within 250 feet of these major waterways.
Old home's gonna be grandfathered in?
Yes. And if you have to replace an old home using the same footprint, is grandfathered. And there's exceptions. I mean, there's certainly things to make sure that nobody can claim that there's a taking of their private property. So you have to have some appeal process for people if they feel like they're being unduly harmed.
Wasn't that just turned down a year ago? I thought it was it a ballot measure or? I
It
forget.
was 2 years ago, no, it was a bill. And it was broader than this. It applied to rivers and streams. It applied to all the rivers in the state. This is a watered down version. Watered down I think is the wrong word. But we're really trying to focus on those areas that are,
The blue ribbon, the most spectacular.
yeah, and that are really under the most pressure.
And that's just homes, or does that include like head gates and things?
No, we are not impacting agriculture. You can't pass a bill if it's gonna. That ain't
Good
happening.
question.
No, that is a great question. It will not impact agricultural operations. Okay, that was another one. Bob, what was the last bill you wanted me to proactively talk about?
It was, well, I covered the Clean Water Restoration Act.
Oh, good. I don't know anything about it.
That's fine, you did clean cars.
That one's a resolution, so I would say that it's just as important, maybe not to mess up your message today, to make phone calls on that one. I mean, that's a resolution, so it doesn't have the force of law. It's just saying, Congress do this. Congress gets those resolutions all the time, and nobody really pays that much attention to them. And it's starting in the Senate, and it's easier to kill stuff in the House this time, because it's split 50-50. So that's not a bill that I would put a ton of emphasis on today if I were you. It is a bill or a resolution that should go down, but I think we can do that in the House side. There are an awful lot of good bills out there on global warming. There's a lot of energy efficiency bills. There's energy efficiency tax credits. There's telling the state to be more energy efficient. Dave Wanzenreed just got a good state building bill out of committee that requires the state to all new buildings to be 20% more efficient than the state standard, making the state lead by example. Wood products industry supported it. There's bills, Mike Phillips has a great bill in to require monitoring and reporting of greenhouse gases. I mean, geez, talk about a fundamental step to trying to regulate greenhouse gases, to know how much is coming out, and have that reported to the state annually. So there's a whole host of energy efficiency type bills. You're welcome to get on our website and you can see a lot of them.
Well, you know, the governor made a big pitch for that Senate Bill 66, the Energy Committee, you know, that carbon sequestration.
Yep.
Is that, are you pushing that, or?
I am. I absolutely believe that. Yep.
That's what he was talking about.
I don't think that bill has a snowball's chance of getting out of committee. It's a bill that passed last session out of the Senate, 38-12. Huge bipartisan support. But what happened this time, which was, you know, it's so ironic, the clean coal machine showed up and said there's no such thing as clean coal. What this bill does, Senate Bill 66, is it says, it establishes, it tells the state to develop standards for geologic sequestration of carbon dioxide. It doesn't say you have to do geologic sequestration. It just said, if you are going to do geologic sequestration, we need a regulatory framework. We need to make sure that you're putting it in the right place, that you're putting it someplace where there's not fault lines, that you're not gonna be near groundwater, that it's not likely to contaminate groundwater, that there's a huge distance with a good barrier in between the body you're putting it in and people's water, that it's not gonna leak. Over time, it's gonna be monitored. I mean, we need a regulatory framework. This is not just a simple little, let's put some CO2 into the ground and walk away. And so we had this bill in, and it established liability. And it said these companies would be liable for putting this in the ground for 75 years. And the company said, what happens after 75 years? It's like, Jesus Christ, you guys don't care. 75 years is a pretty long time frame, and you're saying maybe that's not long enough. I mean, and if anyway, what the industry argued is that the technology is not ready for clean coal, that it's not ready for prime time, it's going to be incredibly expensive, require massive new infrastructure, which of course, those are our arguments. So they're out there running these $32 million ad campaigns during the conventions, and on the other hand, they're saying, but we don't want any mechanism to actually get there. And what we're saying is, we don't believe in clean coal, and if you guys are going to be sticking this stuff in the earth, we want to know how you're doing it. And the governor came out in strong support of it. But I don't think that bill's going to get out of committee. I don't see that happening. That committee is not interested in geologic sequestration.
So the governor can't twist any arms in there to,
He won't use any political, chits for that. He'll use that as a bully pulpit issue.
So he just said it to make it look good?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sorry. But, if you wanted to tell them that, if you guys really want coal to be in the mix in the future, there's only one way to get there. Because by God, we're going to stand in the way of any coal that doesn't deal with CO2. And we're not going to be too keen on geologic sequestration unless we have a really, really darn good regulatory structure in place. Let's quickly go through the bad bills. Really quickly. LC 74 by Senator Keith Bales is trying to stop anybody from ever being able to appeal an air or water permit in the state. What they're after is stopping the types of appeals that are occurring at Highwood. MEIC and Sierra Club's on one or two of them.
Yeah, what's
The
that?
Highwood Generating Station is a 250 megawatt coal-fired power plant just east of Great Falls. It's proposed by some co-ops in the state. It's grossly oversized, and it's going to put about 3 million tons of carbon dioxide into the air each year. It is unnecessary, and it is going to be a big polluting plant in the center of some of the best agricultural land in the state. MEIC has 3 or 4, as of today, 4 lawsuits against them to try to stop that plant from going forward. And they're mad. The legislature in SME are mad at us for not letting that plant be permitted. That plant is permitted, it's a very, very long story that I'm always happy to talk about. But
LC 74 is going to be what?
it is going to require citizens to post bonds to appeal any air permit.
They don't like the lawsuits, though. They're basically passing a law to try to eliminate the lawsuits.
Try to make
Not
it
fix the
nearly
problem.
impossible, really impossible.
Not fix the problem that the lawsuits are addressing.
Which is the
but
fact that
fix the
DEQ,
lawsuits.
our state has the fastest permitting timeframe for air permits in the nation. We require our agencies to issue air permits faster than any other state out there. So guess what? Sometimes they don't do such a good job. The other piece is, right now, nobody's considering CO2. And there's been a spate of litigation across the country in which courts are starting to decide that CO2 is a pollutant under the Clean Air Act. I mean, we've already decided that for vehicles, but we haven't decided it for coal plants, which are the largest producers of CO2 in the nation. So we're saying that CO2 is a pollutant for vehicles, but the largest single source of that pollutant, the CO2 coming from it, isn't a pollutant? It doesn't make any
Didn't the
sense.
Supreme Court just issue a decision that said CO2 should be managed by EPA as a pollutant?
Yes.
I thought that was across the board.
No,
or what?
that was only applicable to vehicles. And what has happened since then is a court in Georgia, the EPA's appellate body, the Environmental Appeals Board, and, Big Stone didn't do this. Those two bodies have now said that CO2 from coal plants is a pollutant subject to regulation. So you can't permit these plants without dealing with the CO2 and putting in emission standards and controlling those emissions. And that's one of our Highwood arguments. That's one of our cases against Highwood, is that they have to do the same thing in this state, especially with our constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment. But they're trying to get rid of the ability of citizens to appeal these types of permits. That's just the long and the short of it. And it is, they may not like what we're doing on Highwood, but the bottom line is DEQ puts out almost 1,000 air permits each year. And between 0 and 2 are appealed by citizens each year. So how big a problem are we talking about here? We are talking about one company that is angry that they can't get financing for their coal plant, and they're blaming it on us. So that's one bill. I talked to you a little bit about Jim Keene's bill, which tries to eliminate any litigation under MEPA. That's LC 5, no, I'm sorry, that's not LC 527. That is LC 731. It doesn't have a bill number yet. And then the other one I just want to talk very, very briefly about, because I think this is really important, and I don't know how to, it's SB 257. We had a hearing on it this week. I think it'd be a great idea for you to talk to legislators about it. What it does is guts Montana's renewable energy standard. It lets PP&L get credit for upgrades at dams, which they have already done or already are going to do, and sell those credits into the renewable energy market and flood the market. Now, Northwestern only has to buy so many renewable energy credits. They're of course going to buy them from PP&L because they're going to be cheaper from PP&L, because PP&L can sell. They can undermine the market because these are upgrades they already paid for. They already did them. So they're going to be able to sell these credits. Northwestern will buy those credits to meet its commitments, and there won't be credits available for true new renewables in the state. And the renewable energy standard was intended to help get new renewable energy projects off the ground, not to let PP&L get a bunch of money to do something it's already doing.
$200,000?
No, we're talking millions of dollars potentially for PP&L. So it is the biggest scam by PP&L, who basically stole these dams from us in the first place. But it is a scam by PP&L to use Montana's renewable energy credits standard to its economic benefit, to the detriment of new renewables in the state. It's brilliant because it's complicated. But we had the governor's office in against it this week. All sorts of people were in favor of it until they started hearing us testify and went, oh, crap. That's what it does? And there are a lot of legislators who signed on to it thinking, it's a great idea to have hydro upgrade existing dams. Of course we're in favor of that, duh. Of course, I'm in favor of that. But should we be undermining Montana's renewable energy standard by giving PP&L money to do something it's doing anyway, to the detriment of bringing on new renewables in the state? And that is what SB 257 does.
257 or 40?
257. So, that one just makes me crazy. We're going to kill that bill. We are going to kill that bill. But it's going to be a battle. So those are kind of the major things. There's tons of little things. Our website has a little description of all sorts of bills that we're tracking. But if you don't understand it, call me. If you want to help on something, there's land use bills that we could always use help on. Gravel pits. I haven't even touched gravel pits today, and there's a ton of gravel pit bills. I don't know if you know it, but the way the court decided last year, DEQ doesn't have to do any environmental analysis on gravel pits. And gravel pits can have significant impacts on groundwater and people who live in the area. So we're in limbo land on gravel pits across the state. And it's very frustrating. And I'm not sure this legislature has the backbone to fix the existing law. And that's a long discussion. But I'm happy to talk to anybody who might have any interest in gravel pits, because it is going to be a big issue this session.
Just a question on lobbying. We're not gonna be here in Helena doing this, you know.
Right, I know.
So what I've always heard is, you know, when I'm talking about lobbying in the federal,
Mhm.
I've always heard that a letter is important, or a phone call, or an email.
Mhm.
But these people don't even have.
They don't always have
people
email.
to answer or to
Right.
receive the letters, in these senators and legislators here. So is that still something, or something you shouldn't do? Because we're not gonna be up here in Helena.
You absolutely should. The hierarchy of contacting legislators in this state is a personal conversation, an email, or a phone call, an email or letter. You can always leave them a message at 444-4800, and that message will get to them. If you just want to tell them how they should vote on a bill, you can do that, or if you want a phone call back. A lot of legislators will call people back after they get your message.
Even if it's Debbie Barrett.
I don't know about her.
One of the advantages to being in Montpelier is that we've got members across the state, that we call our members and have them call our representatives.
Right.
Who goes best, and so it's like
Yeah.
very
And
grassroots.
we have a network similar to
Right.
that,
Yeah.
and that actually you were probably notified about this lobby day event from that network. And so, similar to Montpelier, a lot of the stuff that I know that Sheena and others are doing, we tend to be on the same page. And so, Ann's a great resource for any of the further information. I hope that that's your email, correct?
That is my correct email.
So you're welcome to
Email
jot
or
that
phone
down.
calls, I really, the phone is probably the easiest way to reach me.
What's your phone number?
My cell is 461-9546.
Okay.
That's
And
my
then-
work number that's on the top of that piece of paper, but these days, I'm not in the office much.
So,
And then the other thing is, when people are leave here after today, they want to still stay plugged in. Ann is a great resource, and MEIC provides a lot of that, as well as MCV. That there's probably several groups in the state that are doing similar things.
Right, right.
And we work in a coalition of sorts during the legislative session that is sort of loosely organized by Montana Conservation Voters. And so we are connected, and so if you're connected through Montpelier, or you're connected through MEIC, or you're connected through the Sierra Club, it's likely you're gonna get notices on a lot of the same types of
Right.
bills that we're putting out there.
And we try to
Because we're-
coordinate. We
Yeah.
try to, especially on the big stuff.
So if you're not getting Sierra Club emails about, I know that there's a couple of people here that came here from the EVST department and may not have gotten contacted by me. I passed around that sign-in sheet. I will make sure that anyone who's not on our list, I'll put them on the legislative list, so that when we've got bills coming up, every week I try to send out at least one message. I don't want to send out too much, because I don't want to inundate people, but I want to try to pick the important ones and try
Right.
to send it out around Monday or Tuesday to give you an idea of what's coming up for the week, that you can, I try to do 2 or 3 bills that you can contact your representative on and say, vote no or yes to this, and we always try to give you the most information that we can. MEIC's website is fantastic.
Oh, good.
Very
I don't look at it
up-to-date.
very often.
It's good. And so they've got a way, I'm sorry to say, way better website on the legislative stuff than we do. And so I really refer to that a lot.
Oh, okay,
so.
good, that's good to know.
And then finding out who your legislator is. I've got a computer open up there, and once Ann wraps up, we will, and we're in no hurry, but I know you are.
I have to go meet Mike Phillips in 5 minutes.
Anyone who needs to find out who their legislator is, come over there one at a time, and we'll look it up by your zip code. We'll find out who your senator and your House member is. You can write that down. We'll take the time between when Ann is done and when lunch comes and we eat, that I'd like to see you do a couple of things. And one is to make sure you know who your reps are, and
Right.
you can come over and get that information from me. The other thing is to look through the information that you've gotten and try to formulate which, if we're gonna go to the hearing at 3, for instance, and you're interested in testifying, maybe formulating some notes on what you might say and thinking about those things. But also, if you're gonna ask your legislator to step out from the floor and you're gonna wanna talk to that person about SB 180 or some of these other bills, there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with having 2 or 3, particularly in the case of friendly legislators, to have 2 or 3 bills that we talked about here that you're really psyched about and say, you know, I really want you to support this, we want you to vote
Right.
no against this and support this. And friendly legislature's gonna go click, 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 okay, you know, thanks.
Don't talk to your legislator about a bill from the other house right now. You don't want to go to a senator and start talking about a House bill.
Yeah.
That's just not even on their radar.
Or for that matter, the way you were stating before, is something that's gonna be coming up in 2 weeks from now.
Right. Unless it's bad stuff, sometimes they do remember that, but, yeah, I
It's gotta be
mean,
pertinent
yes.
for the day or maybe the next day.
For at least the week.
And as tough as Debbie Barrett is, and we had a person here last time we were here who had, who was from Troy. She's a new XCOM member actually for us, Raina. And she went up there and said, hey, you know, hey, I live here in this place, I pay taxes, I'm a resident, and, you know, it's your right to approach, and they need to hear
Absolutely.
from you.
That
They
is
need to
true.
know
That
that
is
there's
true.
people that think differently than they do. Even if you know it's gonna fall on deaf ears, it's definitely worth it to get her out of there. And I would say,
Get her out of there so she can't vote.
yeah, and say, you know, this is, you know, and where you live, of course, with her, you want to tell her that you're in her district, and then
Or
when you get
near
out,
their
you know,
district. I
yeah.
mean, you don't have to say,
And,
if
you know,
you're near their district, that's also
I
helpful.
think it's important that they hear from people that are in mostly
right.
conservative places from the people that aren't so conservative. I think that's important.
I agree. I don't disagree. Do you want to keep this for between now and lunch if people want to look up a
Sure.
legislator?
Yeah.
I want that back.
I'll have it with me in
Okay.
the Capitol.
Perfect. Let's not forget. That's-
Any final questions
Bible.
for Ann before she goes off to the meeting?
Yeah.
Quick question. If I, introduce myself, and say, as a Montana citizen, what if the legislator comes back and says, are you from Montana? And I'm not, I'm from Connecticut.
I'm from Sacramento.
Okay.
I don't ever tell them that.
Well,
I mean, they don't ever ask.
They'll never ask.
I live here. Where are you from? I'm from Helena. That's where I live. That's where I'm raising my children. I chose to live here. Don't go there. I mean, just, and they won't either. They just won't. You don't have to worry about it.
Has there ever been any discussion on like a bottle bill or a deposit bill, that 10 other states have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that representative from Bozeman talks about that a lot.
It doesn't lie.
Doesn't good fly. I don't
You
know
know,
what her name is.
here's why. Because an initiative was run back in the 80s, and I wasn't here then, but what I hear is it destroyed the ability for the state to ever get a bottle bill. And Eileen Carney from she's up in Libby, has introduced this bill and done a fabulous job, really outstanding. No way.
So
Not-
it's not even being considered anymore?
Nobody's even introducing it this session that I've heard of. Mm-mm.
It just won't have legs.
It just, no, I mean, god darn, talk about a room full of industry people. That Coca-Cola industry they have a whole aisle in the grocery store.
Well, the reason I asked, when I was in the Iowa legislature, I was a co-sponsor of that bill, and it got through. I mean, it's cleaned up the environment, I mean.
Of course it has.
But we had to go through all the lobbyists from the industry and the beverage people, but, I mean, it's a great bill, I think.
It is a great bill. There's no doubt about the fact that it's a wonderful idea that deserves, I gotta go, that deserves, attention, but it's not happening.
Do you want our packet?
No, that's okay. I got enough paper. Thank you. Call me if you have any questions.